Eleanor of Castile is little remembered in the 21st century. Most people could not place her on a list of the Queens of England.
I am Eleanor, Queen of England and wife of the King Edward, the first of that name. Eleanor is the name the English gave me. In Castilian, my name is Leonor. I was born in the Kingdom of Castile in the year 1241. The Castilian royal court where I grew up was a centre of sophistication, learning and the courtly love of the troubadours. I tried to bring some of that to England. My father and mother, the King and Queen of Castile, had me educated by Dominican monks alongside my brothers and sister. I can read and write fluently in Castilian, French and Latin, but not English, for that is the language of peasants. I married my husband, Edward, in the year 1254, when I was 12 years old. My first child was born the following year, and the last in 1284, when I was 43 years old. During our 36-year marriage, I had at least 16 pregnancies. In the year of 1270, I went with my husband, the future king, to the Holy Land on crusade. There, in 1272, our daughter Joan was born in the city of Accra. There, an assassin entered my husband's tent and stabbed him with a poison-tipped dagger. My beloved husband killed the assassin, but the poison was in his blood. I knelt beside him and sucked the poison from his arm and saved his life. In November that year of 1272, my husband became King of England when his father, Henry III, died, and I became Queen.
In 1275, Edward I put his seal to the Statute of Jewry, meaning England's Jews could no longer loan money for a living. The surviving records suggest that Stephen de Chenuit, the Lord of the Manor of Langley, was deep in debt to Jewish moneylenders. He'd borrowed money from Abraham the Jew of Berkhamsted and others, including Hagin, a moneylender from Oxford. At this time, Queen Eleanor was seeking a location to build a residence for the royal children, well away from the diseases of Westminster and the City of London. In the autumn of 1274, Edward and Eleanor travelled from St Albans west to the Chilterns. In March 1275, Eleanor and Edward went on a royal progress to Aylesbury and Prince's Risborough. This allowed Eleanor to inspect the manors she intended to purchase.
A royal progress averages no more than 25 miles a day. The Manor of Langley was a day's journey from Westminster and near to the King's Highway, west towards the Royal Akerman Street. It would be a perfect location for a royal palace, to be both a stop-off for northern and northwestern western journeys and a base for the royal children. It was defensible, sited as it was on a hill, 400 feet high.
Queen Eleanor bought out Stephen de Chenuit's mortgage debts to the moneylender Abraham of Berkhamsted, and on the 13th of November 1275, legal possession of the Manor of Langley was transferred to her. The construction of the royal palace could proceed.
The palace was partly built by 1279 and it contained private chambers for me, the king and the heir to the throne, our beloved son Alfonso. Builders constructed the royal palace of Langley using stone brought from Oxfordshire quarries. The outer walls were built of flint and all around was a deep moat over 5 metres across and 2 metres deep.
The royal palace that Queen Eleanor built on top of Langley Hill was impressive, and it would serve as the centre of Plantagenet power for nearly 200 years. At Langley, Eleanor had her gardeners install a paved cloister, as well as laying out a deer park, for her other pastime was hunting. The deer park extended towards Chipperfield in the west and eastwards, incorporating the modern-day High Street and down to the River Gade. The surviving royal accounts for the period August 1279 through to November 1281 show a total of £408 being spent on works for Langley. That represents somewhere between £9 and £10 million in today's money.
I imported fruit from my native Castile, including figs, pomegranates, lemons and oranges. I brought olive oil from Castile and 17 baskets of Spanish onions to plant at Langley. I had my gardener, Ferdinand Hispanus, create a vineyard and orchard within the palace grounds.
The royal accounts for 1282 says divers other works were done at Langley Palace by order of the Lord King and his lady the Queen. Queen Eleanor's private chapel at Langley was furnished with panels of painted green speckled with gold. She insisted on lead roofing, painted walls on which were hung tapestries, and her windows were glazed with glass. She imported enamel caskets from Limoges, basins finished in the Damascene style and Venetian Murano glass, and she purchased tapestries from Arras, Cologne and Antwerp, and enamel caskets from Limoges. Her favourite colours for paint and fabrics were once again rich reds and greens, and they would have been the dominant colour of the interiors of Langley Palace. If you want to see what Eleanor of Castile's royal palace of Langley might have looked like, then pay a visit to the newly opened exhibition that's May 2025 in St Thomas's Tower in the Tower of London. The rooms have been dressed in the colours and textures of the late 13th century, including Queen Eleanor's bedroom, which shows her influence on the decoration of English royal interiors, as well as her role in a patron of learning. St Thomas's Tower was built at the same time as Langley Palace, and Eleanor left her personal mark on both. Eleanor also imported crystal and silver-handled dining tines. 500 years before the idea caught on in England, Queen Eleanor was using dining forks at her table.
Since my childhood in Castile, I have always been keen on bathing. I had a bathhouse installed at Langley. Water was piped from the gardens via lead pipes with stoves to heat it. The colours in the bathhouse were vivid reds and green, which I recall fondly from my youth.
Long before the Tudors, Eleanor of Castile adopted as her symbol the Castilian rose. Carved images left from when the palace fell into ruin may still be found in gardens on Langley Hill. The records suggest that during the early years of building, the palace was referred to in some sources as Langley or Childers Langley, and it would be the 14th century, about 1394, before it appears in the court rolls as Langley Regis, King's Langley.
But in the decade before my death, people knew the village below the royal palace as Langley Regina, Queen's Langley.
Eleanor's accounts for the year 1289 show that she bought ink and several rolls of parchment, as well as red wax to seal her letters and gold for illuminating her manuscripts.
At Langley Palace, I had a scriptorium built where I employed 2 full-time scribes, Roger and Philip, who create books and take down my letters. In addition, I have a full-time illuminator, Geoffrey Le Pictor, who is responsible for hand decorating my books.
In 1286, King Edward and Queen Eleanor went to Gascony in southern France, which was then part of King Edward's lands. There, the Queen contracted quartan fever, a malaria-type disease.
I know not how I caught the disease. The onset of fever recurs in intervals of 3 to 4 days, which gives the illness its name. No physician could help me, and as the years passed, I became weaker and weaker.
In November 1290, Eleanor of Castile's health deteriorated, and she passed away in the small village of Harby in Lincolnshire, aged just 48. The Liber Garderobe, her household journal, simply records Decessus Reginae, the Queen has died. Her death devastated her husband the King. In an open sign of his grief, he commissioned stone crosses to be erected at every stop her coffin made on its journey from Harby to Westminster, and some of these Eleanor crosses remain today. There is a fine example at Geddington in Northamptonshire.
In the early months of the year 1290, I feared death approaching. I met with London's most renowned goldsmith, William Torrell, whom I wished to make my funeral effigy. I wanted him to create an accurate image, and that what he created would reflect my Castilian heritage.
That meant that Torrell knew what Eleanor looked like, which makes for a high probability that her funeral effigy is an accurate representation. When comparing Torrell's funeral effigy with other known images of Eleanor, the similarities suggest we look upon the true face of Queen Eleanor of Castile.
Eleanor of Castile was a truly exceptional woman in an age when women held the legal status of a child. Eleanor was no child. She was a dynamic, often forceful personality with a deep interest in religion, the arts and politics. And as such, she strayed into the world of men and therefore soon made enemies. Eleanor was highly influential in her day. She was intelligent, pious, studious, and incomparably better educated and intelligent than her husband. Eleanor could read and write in at least 3 languages. Most importantly, she ensured that she passed this skill on to her children, both male and female. In one sense, she brought the English court fully into the 13th century with her Castilian ways and refinement. In an age when only few people travelled widely, Eleanor lived in Castile, Gascony, England, Wales, Sicily and the Holy Land during her lifetime, as well as visiting Aragon, France, Italy, Scotland and Tunisia. Eleanor's legacy in the 21st century is the series of striking memorial crosses erected by her grief-stricken husband in the years after her death. The king himself chose the inscription found on the pedestal of every cross: "Pray for her soul." On her tomb in Westminster Abbey is an inscription in Norman French: "Here lies Eleanor, sometime Queen of England, wife of King Edward, son of King Henry, and daughter of the King of Spain and the Countess of Ponthieu, on whose soul God in his pity have mercy. Amen." Without Eleanor of Castile, there would likely have been no King's Langley village as we know it. Instead, Langley would have remained an insignificant hamlet off the King's Highway on the road west. Walking through King's Langley today, there is no acknowledgement of Eleanor of Castile and her impact on shaping the village's history. In many ways, she was such an impressive figure and can lay claim to be the forgotten Queen of England.